On October 3, 1952, Great Britain conducted its first nuclear test, codenamed Hurricane. The nuclear device was placed on board the frigate, which was located in the area of the Montebello Islands. The consequences of the explosion amazed even experienced military personnel who observed the test. Placing a nuclear device in one of the frigate's compartments was not a random decision. The nuclear device was large in size and was not a standard munition, which is why it could not be installed on any Royal Air Force aircraft. The second reason why a nuclear charge was installed on the frigate was the desire of the British to conduct an experiment and evaluate the impact of a nuclear explosion off the coast on ships and coastal structures. At that time, Great Britain feared a nuclear strike from the Soviet Union. Intelligence services assumed that the Soviet nuclear charge could have been secretly delivered on a ship to one of the English ports, after which it could have been activated. To accompany the frigate filled with a nuclear device, a special squadron of the Royal Navy was created, consisting of an aircraft carrier and 3 landing ships. The nuclear charge located in the frigate compartment was similar in design to the first American plutonium bombs, powered by the decay of plutonium-239. One of these bombs, codenamed Fat Man, was dropped on Nagasaki. The only difference was the levitating core. Between the plutonium charge and the shell surrounding it, this increased the power of the explosion, but later in more advanced nuclear charges the scheme was abandoned. The ship was anchored between 2 islands, Hermit and 3 Mille. At a distance of 400 meters from the shore, the depth in this place reached 12 meters. At 8 o'clock local time the nuclear charge was detonated. For some reason, the explosion occurred 36 seconds earlier than planned. To the amazement of the military, the nuclear explosion vaporized the ship, leaving only molten pieces of metal that rose into the air and fell onto the shore, causing fires in dry vegetation. On the seabed, despite a depth of 12 meters, a funnel with a diameter of 300 meters and a depth of 6 meters formed. The clouds from the explosion reached a height of 3,000 meters. Due to strong winds, it began to be blown to the southeast, and it quickly lost its mushroom shape. Operation Hurricane made Britain the third nuclear power after the United States and the Soviet Union. Based on the results of the test, it was decided to create a Blue Danube based on the exploded charge of a nuclear aerial bomb. It became the first nuclear weapon adopted by Great Britain. They were more than 7 meters long and had a streamlined shape, weighed 4.5 tons, their power was from 15 to 40 kilotons. The tail of the stabilizer opened after the reset. The disadvantage of these bombs was the use of large lead batteries, which were used as a power source. Blue Danube bombs were first installed on the British Valens long-range bombers, later they were equipped on the Witter and Vulcan bombers, which were capable of delivering nuclear strikes on the European part of the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. After the first nuclear test, the British planned to return to U.S. cooperation, but by that time the Americans had tested their first hydrogen bomb and had gained a technological advantage. They refused to cooperate with Great Britain, not wanting to share new nuclear technologies. Then Great Britain began its own development of thermonuclear weapons, and in 1957 successfully carried out an operation to explode what seemed at that time the first hydrogen bomb. It was an aerial explosion. A bomber dropped a thermonuclear bomb over Malden Island, and in the same year a nuclear bomb, codenamed Orange Messenger, was tested. At that time, these bombs were considered hydrogen, but in fact they were boosted fission bombs. The British planned that ballistic missiles would be equipped with this device. The Orange Spring was a nuclear weapon of accelerated nuclear fission, and contained uranium-235 and a small amount of tertiary. But then a circumstance arose that made the Orange Spring a very expensive and rare type of nuclear weapon. The fact is that Great Britain at that time was producing only 120 kilograms of uranium-235 per year, so mass and serial production of these weapons was out of the question. However, these tests forced the United States to reconsider its cooperation with Great Britain, and in 1958, a mutual defense treaty was signed between the two countries, which allowed cooperation in the field of nuclear research. In April 1958, the first hydrogen bomb was detonated near Christmas Island as part of Project Grab. The British owed their success to cooperation in the United States, which shared technical and scientific assistance and delivered the required amount of lithium to England. The result of these tests was the appearance of the Yellow Sun Mk2 thermonuclear charges, which replaced the obsolete Blue Danube bombs. British thermonuclear bombs were similar in characteristics to the American Mark 28, but were not equipped with braking parachutes. Their braking was provided by a flat head. However, the use of large thermonuclear bombs in long-range aviation was short-lived. The fact is that in the 60s, all Soviet territories with strategic targets that could be hit by British bombers were protected by S-75 mobile anti-aircraft missile systems. Moreover, the fighter aviation regiments of the Soviet Union began to be replenished with interceptor fighters in the Su-9, and supersonic fighters MiG-21. In such conditions, it was almost impossible for British bombers to strike the territory of the Soviet Union before sound. Then the bet was made on supersonic cruise missiles with nuclear warheads. After the signing of the Mutual Defense Treaty between the United States and Great Britain, the British lost their independence in the field of nuclear technology. All work was carried out strictly under U.S. control, and British nuclear tests took place at the American test site in Nevada. In 1959, an additional agreement was signed to the Mutual Defense Treaty, according to which the UK was to transfer all components for nuclear weapons to the United States.